Hello, my name is Eric Green, and the title of my talk is Indefinite Unsustainable Pace, a Problem That Matters. My email address and Twitter handle are there on the slides, and so what I'm trying to do with this talk is I'm trying to underscore that we still have a problem today, despite everything that we've learned with lean and agile and other humanistic approaches to managing work. We still have a problem with unsustainable workloads, oftentimes due to speculative estimation of workloads or other things. But we still find that people end up being overburdened and needing to work more than they should, and actually this has a significant human cost that we will talk about later in the talk. So one of the things that initially drew me to looking at Agile in 2001 was the promise of indefinite sustainable pace, their principle number 8, I believe, of the Agile Manifesto. This was something that in 2001 I felt was a problem with where I was working at the time, and so Agile was something that I could kind of grab onto and look at, a set of heuristics and tools to try to create sustainability in my environment. So we'll look at in the talk. We'll look at some of the things that Kanban offers us by way of creating sustainability. So initially, I just asked the audience why they're here or why they attended the talk. Sustainability is not necessarily a revolutionary or sexy concept, so I was just wanting to get people's feedback in terms of why they were there at the talk. And invariably, there was a common thread with the 4 or 5 people that shared, and then there were a lot of echoes in the room with the people that were sharing. But mostly, people in the room were looking for what Kanban can do for them as they go about trying to create the conditions for sustainability in their environments, either as managers or coaches. So folks were looking for what utility the Kanban brings in terms of creating sustainability, and that's really good because that's really the focus of the talk is kind of how the sustainability agenda of Kanban and how Kanban in general can actually help us make these ideas real. So, yeah, there was a common theme there. So, the intention of the talk is something I just want to lay out as a fourfold intention. So, there are 4 parts to what I'm trying to accomplish with the talk. So the first thing is obviously underscore that overburdening still remains a problem in knowledge work. I think, knowledge workers they tend to make a good wage, a good salary, and I think oftentimes that we think because we pay knowledge workers well that they somehow are obligated to work night and weekends. I mean, after all, they're not digging ditches, right? But I think this is a problem. This way of thinking that we pay people, a good wage, so they should work late. When that becomes the norm, then all of a sudden, things are in a bad spot. So I want to underscore the fact that we still have this problem. 2 is I want to underscore the significant human cost associated with unsustainable work environments. And just note the fact that we spend most of our lives working, and so we shouldn't be subjected to an environment that we wouldn't want to be in all the time, right? Because we're spending more time at work with colleagues and coworkers in many cases than we are with our families, and so the environment at work is definitely very important and key to overall quality of life. So, there's a significant human cost when we don't have those conditions. And three, I'd like to illustrate just briefly some Kanban values that come to us from Mr. Mike Burrows, and how these values support sustainability and sustainability agenda of Kanban and some of the benefits that they bring. And then four, I just want to attempt to galvanize the intention of the group to go out and try to create sustainability in their environments. Size here, where I want to just sample the room really quickly. Did that go away? Yeah, that went away. Let's take a look at this real quick again. So if what I'm going to do is sample the room, if we could just quickly do a self-assessment in your context of work, or if you're a consultant, what you see a lot in organizations, your experience, in terms of sustainability, what do you experience most currently? So would you say that there's a high level of sustainability or sustainable pace in the environment, a moderate level, sort of neutral, it's not bad, it's not good, sort of indifferent? Or if we have a low level of sustainability, that means we have a lot of overburdening, people working late, working weekends. Very low is just maybe that's downright sort of abusive, or you know, just not a very good place to work in. So if you could quickly just figure out where you are in terms of your daily experience, I'd like to sample the room. So do we have, so does everyone kind of know where they sit? Okay. So for all the, how many fives do we have? Very high level of sustainability in your daily work environment. How many fives? Okay. How about moderate level of sustainability in your work environment? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. Perfect. Thank you. How about moderate level of sustainability? What happened? Are you going in ascending or descending? I'm going descending. Oh, moderate level. Sorry, neutral. Neutral is sort of indifferent. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Okay, relatively low level of sustainability, not a great situation. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. And then very low level, very tough environment to be in every day. Okay, no. Yeah. Okay, you're in a tough environment. Really tough. Okay, okay.
No, I just have a question.
3.
Can I say something? So I consider myself a 4, but there are people in my own team that are 1s and 2s.
Okay, I mean the environment that you're in generally. It's a sort of a shared context.
They have 3 or 2.
Okay.
I have a team that's a 4 and a team that's a 2.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll just pick one. So 3 then. Okay, so I just wanted to create this shape to see what it looks like. So we're slanted over, definitely on this side. The extremes, we're not going out on the extremes, which is good. So we're kind of in the middle there, with more of a preference towards kind of low level of sustainability or moderate. That should be, sorry, neutral. So we would like to change the shape of this to move more, you know, kind of counterclockwise direction. So that's roughly what I would expect based on my experience. Just a little bit about me. We won't spend too much time on this. 20 years in the industry, 17 years at Advanced Market Devices doing lean manufacturing and process control. The last 4 years, I've really been into the Kanban method and taking Scrum teams and kind of transforming the performance of those Scrum teams, switching to a continuous flow pull system. I helped David out with some training earlier this year, and I founded a company last year where what I'm trying to do now is, after stepping away from industry for 20 years, is leverage 10 years of doing Scrum all over the world and understanding the challenges that you can experience there, and then exploring, you know, the whole interdisciplinary kind of approach to managing creative knowledge work. I very much see this community as an interdisciplinary, you know, type of community that's drawing on ideas from different fields, and so that's very interesting to me. And then finally, I want to use Kanban and these methods to create sustainability for people so that we can actually improve the quality of life and improve the experience at work. So that's a little bit about me. I'm an AKT with LKU as well. And just for proof that I'm a carbon-based life form and not a silicon-based life form, just a picture of my son. We're big into baseball, and he pitches and catches, and so we do a lot of that. That's allegedly my son. Okay, so why is this something that we should care about? So does anyone want to share why they think that the idea of sustainability is something that's relevant or important? Sure.
Yeah, so after watching several Scrum teams across companies trying to produce something iteratively, I've realized that they don't really have a sustainable base that they start with. They are sold some idea, like you will start with this process, you will get some sustainable space right away.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen, and the value of flow is lost. A lot of scrum budding and such scenarios show up, and then they ask for what's the next step.
Mm-hmm.
That's what
Yeah, I've had a lot of similar experiences as you. Anyone else? Why should we care about sustainability? Why does it matter? Sure.
We actually had a whole team that, because of the amount of work that they were given, and they would not bring anybody else in, the whole team walked out and left the company in a really bad spot.
Really? Wow, that's fairly drastic.
Yeah, about
How many were there? How many people were there?
about 10.
10.
Yeah. They all walked out quick the same day.
Wow, that's a bit disruptive, isn't it? Money.
Pragmatic answer, because it works.
Because it works, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I'm on that team now, and we don't work that
You don't have the whole team quit on one day.
Yeah.
That's, wow, okay. Anyone else? Why it matters?
I think to address maybe that comment about how do you get people who are A-types or management to care, is that you can get the best overall performance by establishing a sustainable pace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Product quality, the effect on product quality? Okay. Anyone else?
What about basic humane processes that have mental and physical safety in mind?
Yeah, and that's more kind of the perspective that I have is that, it should be a humane environment, right? Otherwise, if they don't all leave it one day, then slowly over time, they'll just walk out the door and we'll cycle fresh ones in, and then they'll leave and we'll keep cycling people in. So that's not good. So yeah, that tends to be the way that I look at it, and why it's such a priority for me is because this quality of life. I tend to have kind of a spiritual outlook on things, and when you get to be over 40, you actually start to look at where does the road end, right? How much more time do I have? Like before I was 40, I never thought about that I was going to still live forever, even at 39. But after I broached 40, I'm thinking. I'm looking at my watch, I'm thinking, am I halfway? Am I 60%? Like, how much more time is left, right? So we shouldn't waste our time in environments that are unsustainable. So going back to something that Mike referenced, we go back to the Agile Manifesto, principle number 8. There it is. Agile processes promote sustainable development. Sponsors, developers, users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely, and so this is where the indefinite sustainable pace comes from, which is the opposite of the title of the talk, indefinite unsustainable pace. So a little bit of play on words there. This was the thing, again, that drew me into looking at Agile methods, because this is just something that is just so, it's been so pervasive in my experience, unsustainable pace, that this was something that really touched me and was a reason that I initially got into these kind of ways of thinking. Okay, so an Agile manager's dilemma. Who knows where this comes from? The answer should be like bang, bang, bang. Yeah, okay, yeah. So this is the first page of the Blue Book, right? And again, this was the hook, the thing that pulled me in, right? And that's by design. But so 2002, I was an embattled dev manager. So right there, I was like, okay, I'm going to read this book, right from that one sentence, because I could relate to that, you know. How could I protect my team from the incessant demands of the business? Does that sound familiar? And achieve what the Agile community now refers to as sustainable pace. So this is the first page of the book. And this was the thing that, you know, when I read this, I made a decision on the spot that I was going to read the rest of the book. So, yeah, it's definitely a key idea. So just let's look at the definition quickly. I often go to the dictionary for inspiration or to validate, you know, what I think I understand. And so, you know, just the plain definition from Merriam-Webster of sustainable, or that which is sustainable. The ability to be used without being completely used up or destroyed, able to last or continue for a long time. So, you know, just again to orient the term that we're using, there's the definition. Okay, so there's really no end to the utility of this graphic, I've realized. But so indefinite unsustainable pace is kind of what we see here a little bit. I mean, we don't know how long this has been going on, but we've got some issues here that are being called out. So we don't know what happened before this scene, and we don't know what happened after this scene. I mean, maybe we had acts of leadership here, and then everyone went back to their desk and put their headphones on and did things the same way. Or maybe, someone called, kind of an ad hoc meeting and said, look, we've got these problems we've got to work through. But so I think it's interesting. This is calling out just a moment in time, but I think it's interesting, what happened before this and potentially what happens after this scene. So you've got some, if you look at the expressions on the faces, I mean, you've got some human cost there that you can see. So the I'm stuck guy looks a little bewildered, a little perplexed maybe. So that's the emotion that he's got on his face.
The beard.
I'm sorry?
The growing beard.
The beard, yeah. In the middle, I'm too busy. That lady looks a little sort of afraid maybe. There's some emotion there that's kind of like, I don't know kind of what's going on. The guy that's idle is sort of, he looks a little checked out a little bit, he looks a little kind of like there's not a lot of expression there. So there's definitely, I don't know how the graphic art came to be, but you can definitely see some issues there with these people and the expressions on their faces. So we've got a problem there, definitely. This is something that I've noticed that actually goes back to the comment that you made with kind of the batch processing of Scrum and some of the issues that we can face there. After 10 years of doing Scrum all over the world and managing teams, this is something that I've found to be fairly common, is what I call this stress wave or this stress cycle. So if we're doing a 2-week iteration, we start the iteration. The first week is kind of, kick your feet up, everything's cool, we're relaxed, we have time, right? But then when we get to that second week, that next Monday of the second week, okay, now we're a little more tense. We're not as relaxed, right? And then as that week progresses, we're trying to get maybe we're dumping a bunch of tests on the QA people at the end. Maybe we're coding to get the demo, all in order. But that pressure and the stress, it ramps up in that second week. And so we're going through this psychological kind of stress cycle every single iteration. And this is not necessarily a healthy thing. Now, I'm not saying this happens in all cases, but it's definitely something that I found to be very common. So I think this is something that you get with batch processing in general, right? Because at the beginning, we're making a commitment to a group of things, and oftentimes that's based on speculation. It's based on our gut feel as a team. Maybe we're using points or something else, but we're kind of just saying, okay, we think we can do these 5 stories or features or whatever it is. Everyone agree we can do these? Yeah, everyone nods their head. Okay, we'll commit to that, right? But what is it based on? At the end of the day, oftentimes it's based on speculative commitment. And that can be challenging. And so when we base our commitment on speculation, then that often puts us in a tight spot because we don't really know if we can finish that work in that period of time. We don't have any empirical evidence other than, we can look at historical velocity, right? That fluctuates a lot, but there's a lot of error potentially in the points that we use or how we're estimating things. So, that commitment that we make to that batch of work at the beginning of a sprint can be problematic, and it creates stress oftentimes on people. And we're constantly going up and down, up and down, up and down, and that's not necessarily something that we want. So what is the cost? Again, I want to look at the human cost of unsustainability. So I just want to share a brief story real quick. So I was managing a team fairly recently in the last couple of years, and the culture in the organization that I was in, and I'm not going to name the company, but the culture of the organization was very much based on an annual budgeting cycle that was based on speculative estimation of projects. So the senior managers would say, okay, we want to do these 30 projects. I need an estimate for every project and some ideal dev days, right? And so that would trickle down. The directors would give those orders to the dev manager. The dev manager would then get all the engineers together, rip them away from whatever they're doing to come up with estimates, right? And then maybe we do a Cartesian decomposition where we try to break everything down into atoms, and then we try to add it all up. And then maybe we add 50% to that, or maybe we just double it depending on our mythical, magical, weighting that we do. And then based on those final speculative estimates, we would come up with a plan, a project plan for the following year. And we'd say, okay, we can do 32 projects. And so we're committing to the business. We're going to deliver these 32 projects. And so then the engineering teams are all on the hook for delivering those projects. And it's, based on just pure speculation, right? So this culture of this kind of annual budgeting driven by speculation was really ingrained. And along with that, we have, obviously hero culture and glorification of complexity, all these things that we see for many years that was just ingrained in the culture. So the team that I had, there was one individual on the team that was kind of like the quintessential alpha geek. He was like super smart. He could solve any problem. He would mentor the younger engineers. He would work late, right? He kind of prided himself on being the last one out the door and working late, working weekends, and making sure that we're delivering these projects that are based on speculative estimates. So he would do whatever it took. He would just kind of spend himself completely to do this. And this individual was just the most, upstanding person that you could ever want to meet. Vegetarian, clean living, family guy. He just did everything right, and he worked extremely hard because he bought into the culture. Even though I would explicitly tell him, I don't want you working late. I don't want you working weekends. I don't want you working from home. I would explicitly tell him that, but he would disregard that because it was just part of his identity that he related to this hero culture. So after I left this company, 1 month after I left the company, I got a phone call that this individual had a heart attack. And so one morning before he went to work, he had a heart attack. He didn't have blood flow to his brain for about 45 minutes. So he was instantly brain dead that morning. And he went to the hospital. He was hooked up to machines for a week on life support. I was called a week later, the last day that that they kept him alive. And so I went to the hospital. And as I sat in the hospital, and of course everyone's grieving. They know they're going to just turn off the machines that day. and I see his wife and his child embrace each other, I'm thinking, my God, why was he in the office? The last 9 months, he spent far more time in the office than he did with his family. And so that's the kind of the tragic side of an unsustainable environment. And that's very, very real, right? And while I cannot infer that the overburdening at work was the cause of the heart attack, I can't make that inference. What I know for a fact is that he spent far more time in the office working than he did with his family for the prior 9 months that he was alive. And so, that's, it just underscores the human cost of unsustainable environments. Did you have a comment?
I've seen that 4 times already.
You've seen it 4 times? What exactly? People having a heart attack?
Same scenario.
Same scenario. At different places? 4 times?
4 times.
Over what period of time?
Since 86.
Wow. That's it, man. That's even more striking than my story. So I mean, this stuff matters, and especially since we have a limited time, right? So it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to work in these environments. It doesn't make sense to enable these environments. And the good news is that we have a set of tools that we can use to make things better. So the impact is very, very real, as we see. So just some of the reasons of why this stuff exists still to this day. Some of it has been mentioned: the inertia of dysfunction, speculative estimation, personal commitments from predictive annual budgeting is a big problem. So the keynote this morning talked about some of this and how they're getting away from that. A glorification of complexity is something that kind of goes hand in hand with hero culture. It's something that I've experienced a fair bit in industry. We like to glorify things being very complicated because we're smart, right? If we can design something that's complex, that means we're smart. But it really just causes a lot of additional problems. Hero culture is something we've been talking about for 20 years or more, right? But it's still very prevalent, I think, especially in industry, in larger companies. Magic and the racket of rising to the challenge. So that's just, right, it's when someone comes to you and says, we've got this tough, impossible thing, but we want you to do it because we know that you can get it done, and you rise to the challenge, right? So it's kind of like a racket, right? It's not really legitimate. We're just saying we're trying to inspire someone to do an impossible task, and so that's not a safe environment to be in. And then high-paid servitude. I think oftentimes in organizations we think because we pay people well that they should work late. They should work weekends. We pay them a lot of money. Knowledge workers make a lot of money, right? So, I mean, they're not digging ditches, so why can't you work late, right? Well, there's a cost to that. So, okay, what can we do about it, right? So the guy here says, let's do something about it. Okay, so again, what happens after this scene? What happens? Does he kind of go back and do nothing? Does he go into his boss's office and say, look, we've got a problem that we need to take some action here, and here are the changes that we've decided that we're going to make. But what actually does this individual do after he makes this comment, let's do something about it? So some Kanban provides a basic solution, at least in part, to some of this. And this quote I really love. By ours truly, Mike Burrows. Kanban is a humane, start with what you do now approach to change. And the word humane in there, I think, is really important. So I'm glad that that's called out. I was really glad to see this when Mike authored this. And then we're just going to talk a little bit more about the sustainability agenda, which is consisting of transparency, balance, and collaboration. Overall, we have a goal with Kanban to balance demand against capability at different levels, at the individual level, at the team level, at the organizational level. And these different values help us to do that. So transparency, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, really. There's not a lot to say here. We want transparency at different levels going all the way up to the organization. So, things like strategy, portfolio, project, the services we provide, the work that we manage, experiments that we're doing, and down to the personal level, which is more kind of a proto-Kanban level. We want transparency at all those different levels. And if we actually have transparency at all those different levels, now we actually have power to influence things. When we don't have transparency at like a portfolio level, but we have it at the lower levels, then things can be disconnected. So we want transparency of the work, of risk, policies, feedback loops, dependencies, all these things. And so transparency is kind of like, again, a kind of a precursor. Balance, understand, we want to understand the rate and shape of demand. We want to balance risk against capability. Obviously, we want to limit WIP, and we want to shape demand to the extent that we can to improve the flow. Collaboration, again, fairly self-explanatory. Improve collaboratively, evolve experimentally. We want to establish problem-solving relationships, right? That's a really powerful thing. We want high-quality interactions, and Mike talked about pairing. I've actually experienced where we can use a WIP limit as a system constraint to provoke people working together. So if you have an activity and we have 4 individuals that can do the activity, if you set the WIP limit to n over 2 or to be half the number of people that you have, then you have a system constraint that forces people to work together. And so you don't have to explicitly say, I want you to go pair this week with somebody, or you don't have to kind of do that. We just implement a system constraint, which is the WIP limit, and then people just naturally work together in honoring the WIP constraint. Promotes feedback loops and alignment of values. So this is actually my quote. I think Kanban is the middle way of knowledge work because it's the way of we start with the context that we have. We seek to understand, first and foremost, what the problems are, what the opportunities for improvement are. So, it's not an extreme. It's really kind of the middle way approach to knowledge work, in my opinion. Some of the benefits that we get from some of these things are present moment awareness. So this is something that we need for focus, creativity, innovation, problem solving. This is the quality of thought that we're having, right? Even if we're working on one thing, right? How satisfied am I every day? Do I have stress on my mind? Are there things bothering me? Right? How well am I solving problems? How well is my mind working? Right? So we want a sustainable environment to promote this idea of present moment awareness. Economy of effort, I think, is something that's also important. We want to accomplish more with less energy. So I'm sure many of you have seen this graph before. This is the cost of context switching, right? But the point with this, we know that when we're doing a lot of things at the same time, we know that we're wasting a huge percentage of that time. But the point here is that even when we're doing one thing at a time, if I'm doing one thing and then my boss says, okay, stop doing that, now do this thing. Don't worry about that anymore, do this thing. And then it happens again, okay, I need to put that on hold, do this thing, right? Now, even though I'm not multitasking as such, it's still not a good spot to be in. I'm still not getting, a good quality kind of problem solving time. And so my time is not effectively being used on that one task. So we want economy of effort. We want to be in a good place, mentally and physically, such that our mind is working well and we can solve problems quickly with not a lot of energy. This is a poem by a guy named Mark Epstein about the impermanence. So, I made the point that life is short, life is limited, we shouldn't waste our time. I just want to read the poem quickly, and it kind of speaks to the impermanence of life. Do you see this glass? I love this glass. It holds the water admirably. When I tap it, it has a lovely ring. When the sun shines on it, it reflects the light beautifully. But when the wind blows and the glass falls off the shelf and breaks, or if my elbow hits it and it falls to the ground, I say, of course. But when I know that the glass is already broken, every minute with it is precious, right? And that just speaks to the point of the past doesn't exist, the future doesn't exist. This moment that we're sharing in this room does exist, right? Right now it exists. And so we should take advantage of the present moment to do something about it, and not wait for later. Because someday is a myth. Someday doesn't exist. Sustainability is a precondition for what we seek. Again, back to Karievsky's talk yesterday, safety is a precondition. It's not a priority. And in the same token, sustainability is a precondition. Maybe you have more lofty goals or things that we're trying to accomplish. Service orientation, survivability, market performance, get to a level of Blizzard skis, right? These are kind of lofty things. But if we don't have sustainability first and foremost, we can't get there. And so, I think it's a bit dangerous to focus on the lofty goals without first getting our house in order in terms of sustainability. So I really see that as a precondition of these other things that we want to do. So quickly in summary, unsustainability, it remains a common problem with a real human cost, as we've seen. Sustainability provides relief, awareness, creativity, economy of effort, and it is in fact a precondition for some things that we want: quality of life, innovation, service orientation, survivability, market success. So now, let's do something about it. What do you think? Thank you very much. And these are just self-indulgent animations at the end.